Codes invite us to solve things. They make us feel that patience and pattern spotting can unlock truth. The Zodiac letters and ciphers did exactly that for decades. They pulled the public into a puzzle. In this episode, we explore codes, crowdsourcing, and confirmation bias through the lens of the Zodiac case. We keep the language neutral and avoid graphic detail. Our goal is to learn how to think clearly when puzzles go viral and theories multiply online. First, what is broadly confirmed in public reporting? Some letters and ciphers attributed to the Zodiac were sent to newspapers and law enforcement in the late 1960s and early 1970s. Several were authenticated and published. One early cipher, often called the 408, was solved by private citizens shortly after publication and referenced motives in broad terms. Other ciphers resisted solution for many years. In 2020, an international team announced a solution to the so-called 340 cipher using computational search and linguistic insight. Authorities acknowledged that the decoded message did not contain identifying details. Across the record, specifics differ by source, but the central outline holds. At least one early cipher was solved quickly. The 340 was solved decades later, and other material remains debated. Codes attract crowds, and crowds bring strengths and risks. The strength is diversity. A mathematician, a linguist, a programmer, and a hobbyist can see different things. The risk is noise. Thousands of guesses can generate apparent patterns that are not real. Online, this looks like many grids, many alphabets, and many claimed solutions, each supported by intense belief. The challenge is to separate the feeling of a fit from the discipline of a proof. Confirmation bias is the mind's habit of finding what we expect to find. If we think a certain name is involved, we see that name in letter fragments, in acrostics, or in diagonal readings. If we think a certain method was used, we prefer keys that produce that method's result. Bias is not a moral failure. It is a human default. The antidote is to set rules before we test a hypothesis and to publish those rules with the result. If a solution requires many exceptions, wildcards, or edits after the fact, it is likely overfitting to noise. Let us outline a clean approach to cipher work that avoids common pitfalls. First, define the exact plaintext character set you will accept, such as uppercase letters and spaces only. Second, define the encryption model you are testing: substitution, transposition, homophonic substitution, or a combination. Third, set a limit on degrees of freedom. How many symbol merges, wildcards, or nulls are allowed? Fourth, pre-register a scoring rule for success. For example, a dictionary-based language model score compared to a random baseline. Fifth, pre-register a protocol for a blinded test. Hide a portion of the cipher, derive the key from the visible part, and see if it predicts the hidden part accurately. These steps do not guarantee truth, but they reduce self-deception. Crowdsourcing benefits from structure. A project that releases machine-readable ciphertext, explains candidate models, and tracks attempted keys with outcomes will produce better work than a free-for-all thread of screenshots. Leaderboards that reward negative results, keys that were tested and failed, save time and reduce duplication. Moderation that bans doxing and speculation about private individuals protects real people from harm. When puzzles attract attention, ethics must ride alongside curiosity. We should also talk about pareidolia, the brain's tendency to see faces in clouds and names in noise. In cipher work, pareidolia appears when we allow diagonal, spiral, or knight's move readings, or when we permute the grid until a chosen name appears. With enough freedom, any short name will appear somewhere. To reduce this, fix the grid rules first, justify them from evidence, and stick to them even when they do not produce a desired result. Publish failures. A method that only works when it finds a favorite outcome is not a method. It is a mirror. The media layer matters. Headlines prefer decisive claims. Social platforms reward confidence. That means provisional ideas can be amplified as conclusions. When you read about a new breakthrough, ask simple questions. Is the full plaintext published? Are the rules and keys shared? Has an independent group replicated the result? Do official bodies acknowledge the method without relying on it for identification? Answers to these questions tell you whether to file the result as interesting, promising, or proven. What does responsible curiosity look like for listeners? If you enjoy puzzles, participate without turning people into suspects. Work on the text, the math, the history of cryptography. Avoid nomming private individuals or treating coincidences as evidence. If you think you see something new, write up your method clearly and invite replication. If law enforcement asks for tips, provide them privately through official channels. Resist the urge to post names publicly. The cost of a wrong name is borne by a real person and their family. We can also learn about resilience from the 340 solution. The team that published the Decode used a combination of search strategies, software, and insight into the author's style, including features like diagonal reading across rows with columnar shifts. They tried many keys that failed before one produced text that parsed as English with coherent sentences. Importantly, the decoded message did not name a person. That outcome teaches two lessons. Interesting technical progress does not always answer identity questions, and absence of identifying data is still data. It tells us that some puzzles were not designed to reveal the author, but to provoke and to perform. Let us summarize a listener's toolkit for code-related cases. 1. Prefer methods that are specified in advance, with limited freedom. 2. Look for independent replication and full publication of plaintext and keys. 3. Reject solutions that require reading names by bending grids or by making many ad hoc changes. 4. Treat headlines as invitations to read the method, not as endpoints. 5. Keep ethics in view. Puzzles are not permission to target private people. 6. Remember that a solved cipher can still contain no identifying information, and that this does not make the solution less genuine. If you are a teacher or a parent, ciphers can inspire learning across subjects. Use authentic texts stripped of sensitive context. Teach substitution and frequency analysis. Show how language models can score candidate decodes. Emphasize that good teamwork records failures and avoids motivated reasoning. This turns a dark story into a lesson in careful thinking, not in speculation. We close with a balanced thought. Codes are seductive. They promise certainty but often deliver ambiguity. Crowds can make progress, and crowds can also magnify error. The discipline that protects truth is simple. Define your rules first, publish them with your result, invite replication, and respect the privacy of people who never ask to be in your story. Curiosity and caution can live in the same room. When they do, puzzles become a school for better judgment rather than a stage for confident guesses. Next time, we examine the D.B. Cooper hijacking as a study in money trails and mythmaking. We will focus on confirmed facts, on what cache can tell us when names do not, and on how stories grow in the space between evidence points. Narration generated with AI, facts verified from public sources. No legal advice is given. The purpose is education and public safety. If you have a case tip or a documented pattern to share, use a safe channel and remove personal information that could identify non-public individuals.